We all have our guilty pleasures, things that we get unexpected joy out of that is going to be questioned by your fellow human beings. Tommy Wiseau's The Room is good, and don't you try and tell me otherwise. I can appreciate these people who worked hard in creating that much of a train wreck for my entertainment. My god, cricket and tennis are like the most boring sports ever. Did you see that Wimbledon final and the Cricket World Cup final happening simultaneously? You were switching channels back and forth, don't lie. Two of the closest games you could ever wish for in those sports. Alcohol, drugs, pornography, we all know the negative effects it has on us, but man, when you take a sniff or if some hot chick gets down on her knees, you're sold. The same attitude applies to video games, because when a highly anticipated game releases and it falls flat on its bum, it's the internet's oh proud responsibility in putting that game in its place. And what better example is there than Star Wars Battlefront 2? EA. This game had such a chaotic launch it made Brexit look like everything was under control. A lack of fun game modes, bad progression, surprise mechanics. Can't believe I said that. All of these things piled up, resulting in mediocre reviews. I've made 2 videos on Battlefront 2 since its release, and both times I was there to basically stamp on its bullshit. I concluded that the game wasn't what we were promised, and it didn't do justice to the originals. I unfollowed their Twitter, had no interest in future updates or the game itself anymore. Now, about a month ago now, a friend approached me and asked if I had tried the game out recently, and then they tried to persuade me to give it another go. Long story short, I was very hesitated, but eventually got the updates done. There's no new games coming out for a while, so, you know, why not? And, well, I didn't regret it. The game is actually really good now. So to that friend, because I know you're watching, I was trying to find a song to send you, because I'm not that one for words, but I couldn't really find anything fitting. So, I would just appreciate if you found one for yourself. One that gives us both some great joy. I do have one in mind. So, why is this game so good now? Well, it's mostly because of this. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the gameplay before. I had my gripes with it, but overall I thought it ran very well. I played a bit of the older mode since my return. Starfighter Assault, that was always good and it still is. Heroes vs Villains, depending on how the game goes, it can either be really fun or it can be mentally challenging. It's pure chaos most of the time since I'm picking the Saber users, but there are some like little tactics you can pull off every now and then, like using the chokehold and getting a teammate to let loose on that character while you hold them in position, or using a combo of abilities that guarantee you a few hits. Keep an eye on your stamina, but most importantly, stay together. Personally, I go back and forth with Galactic Assault. I always thought it was a fun game mode, but only on certain maps, like Kashyyyk and Naboo. But playing more than a few games in a row was enough. Some maps are very clustered and they didn't really allow attackers to mix up their tactics rather than just relentless pushing. It didn't surprise me too much that I'd left this game as early as I did, or knowing that back then Galactic Assault was really its flagship game mode along with Starfighter. So what kept me coming back to Battlefront 2 came around the end of March this year.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Capital Supremacy. While it's not a complete resurrection of Galactic Assault from the originals, it still comes close enough to what fans were asking for at the beginning. Fight over command posts, gain reinforcements, get your ass on the escort ship to increase a few tickets for the next round, and then storm the enemy battleship and override a few weak points to win the game. If you fail that sector, the battle resets on the ground. With balanced teams, these games can be a long sit. One of the best new additions I think that's helped this game a lot, and it's been put into the other modes as well, is the new squad system. Before, players would usually just be spawned in with 3 other randoms that were spawning at that time, and they'd all just run off their own ways with no intentions of coordination. Capital Supremacy eliminates the linear structure we had in Assault, and it allows players to make out their own dynamic decisions as the game goes on. Supremacy feels a lot more like a war than, say, Battlefield's Operations, which is practically the same thing. Reason 1 is the transition from ground combat to the capital ships don't feel as disjointed than having 2 original multiplayer maps that are still fun and play different, but the battle lines of the story that it's trying to tell just aren't as memorable. Reason 2, the little mini cutscenes in between the transitions just add a little bit more atmosphere and character to the battles. Battlefield 1 just had like the camera zoom up cinematically while the colonel would shout a few words of encouragement to you. I think it might have been a bit more memorable though if he gave you a bit of a bollocking.
Never have I seen such a shower in all my life. You recruits are here for one reason only, and that reason is war. I said war!
And reason 3, no loading screens in between segments. It's just win, jump on escort, quick cutscene, attack. Everything feels like it runs in real time. It's refreshing to see a game mode that feels a little more unique, and while the two phases are rather mimicking modes you see in other shooters, Supremacy has a certain style and personality to it. Being Star Wars, you're going to get some hilarious callouts, especially from the battle droids. The voiceovers from both the team's commanders reacting to the game as it progresses.
This is all your fault.
There are still a few nitpicks I have within the game, like there's no new weapons for each class that have been added, it's just 4 for each class. I personally wouldn't change the way that the heroes in Supremacy work, but you can have those games where it's just impossible to get one. Because what players can do, players can get those heroes and then die and then just go back to the loadout screen and just re-queue, which is like 5 to 10 seconds cooldown, and then they can just select that hero and go again. Right, I'm gonna wait for Darth Maul, I think. Yeah, oh f***. But I like to have these kind of moments where I'm controlling a character that just shreds infantry apart to be a rare occasion. I feel a lot more captivated when I'm getting to experience something I don't often get the chance to. You can't leave and rejoin squads mid-game, so if you want to squad up with your mates, you're going to have to do it from the menus. And finally, this almost made me want to uninstall the game. Why the f*** is Jar Jar Binks not a playable character? I mean, DICE, please. It's one thing not to have brought us Galactic Conquest, but to not embrace this character who was seriously let down by poor CGI is on a completely different ship. Yeah, so I better stop there before I lose it. So yeah, Jar Jar Binks, new weapons, a little improvement to the squad system will easily obtain this game to be maybe a 9, even a 10 maybe. And to some of you probably think I'm jumping on the throb train, which I can kind of understand where you're coming from, but it's not an exaggeration. This game has changed a lot in its year and a half, and I would encourage anyone who missed out or left early to come back, but at the same time, while I'm thinking about it now, I can completely understand why someone would say no. You know, this game from the beginning tried to pull a fast one on us and tried to disguise it with nostalgia from generations. Whether you're a veteran nerd who remembers the impact the originals had, or the 90s babies like myself who grew up with the prequels, or the fresh faces who are embracing the new ones. I would have never thought I would have come back to this game, especially after doing the 8 months later video. Here's a quick clip of what I said. After playing the game for about 10 hours in the last week and a half, I've reached the conclusion that this game was never, for me, meant to be a long-term standing shooter. It felt more like, for me, just a filler, just for a few months. But it didn't even reach that. That's what was up with me talking about guilty pleasures at the beginning, because this game, at launch, almost corrupted my happy memories to a franchise that has brought me joy for as long as I can remember. But not long after that I saw The Last Jedi, so I mean, surely the only way we can go from here is up. I know people get tired of hearing the old saying, oh, it should have been like this from the start. And I understand, I know people say that all the time, they toss it around. But I think there's more to that than just a simple phrase. You know, why is a consumer who is willing to pay good money for a product to have to wait nearly a year and a half to get the features that they would have paid for in the beginning? It's like going to the cinema to see half a movie. It's like getting a 16GB smartphone that only holds 4 gigs. And once you pass the honeymoon phase, you don't simply feel as enthusiastic to get back in there. You know, the game's been out for a while, you've probably seen lots of gameplay and posts online, so that surprise factor has been completely dismembered, which makes it all the much harder to feel the urge to play it. So the question I want to pose to you guys is, now that we've been through that with Battlefront 2, do all future games under EA's belt await the same fate with this new live service program? You know, we can analyse Battlefront 2's past lightly because we're in the comfort of knowing what the game is like now, but EA's most recent titles like Anthem and that other game are both running under an LS, and both have been heavily criticised for being quote-unquote unfinished games. Unless there's a game that comes out eventually that proves us otherwise, I think it's fair to say that it's a system that's made games better for fewer people that are willing to stick around. So whether you have given up on EA games entirely, or if it is something you are still passionate about, is it a system you think you're willing to put up with? Or do you prefer the more scheduled, expected content you would only get by purchasing a season pass. At the end of the day though, it's just a big slap in the face with a big fish to understand how things are now with any sort of entertainment. Movies, games, sports, etc. Everything's a business now. Sure, in gaming we make exceptions for teams like Naughty Dog, Rockstar, CD Projekt Red, who we trust on releasing absolute bangers at release. But for the mass market, deadlines, poor working conditions, and less originality, it all results in games having their potential either held back or completely wasted by these practices. Well, at least for Star Wars it could be worse.
I'm solo.